what he said is on his way to school every day, elementary school, he would walk by a newsstand. And there was a guy there selling the newspapers. And this guy would actually talk to him, say hello, how are you doing? And really would just have little brief conversations every day, saying, oh, you're such a nice kid and do well in your schoolwork and really do well. And he said that that was what made a difference in his life, just those brief conversations. And some of the research that we've done in Vancouver finds a similar finding. Those children who say they have at least one important adult at their school with whom they feel is important to them, they're more likely to have higher empathy, to do better in school, to have higher social responsibility. So the research on resiliency says the sort of core finding from the resiliency research about making a difference is relationships. The relationships that children have with each of you, the relationships that children have with the other teachers, and how important that is to really have that connection. Now, it's interesting of how easy it is to make a relationship with children. Some of the things, when we were doing some research down at King George Secondary School, we asked the students in a number of different surveys, what do teachers do to show that you care? Do you know what the one reason that most of them cited is sort of the top of their list? The teacher who says hi to me in the hallway by my name. So that's another thing is I would suggest, is sort of if I had my recommendation, really learn children's names as soon as you can, because there's something about that that makes them feel like they matter. Now, the other lesson I have for you is really to think about you can make a difference. And there's different ways that each of you can make a difference and get into the heart of children and to be able to connect with them. And it really could be done through playing and also inspire, because I can't leave you out. And that's the one thing. One thing is I do want to sort of talk about is this idea of how you connect with the kids and make a difference. Thank you for that. And I'm going to just, I'll tell you about one other research study. It's how some of you might be wondering, we're doing this Reading Week thing. We've heard Kim talk about the important adults in the lives. How much can we make a difference in 2 weeks? Are we really going to have an influence on the children? And I'll tell you about another research study, not conducted by me, but one of my colleagues, called the Lunch Buddy. And they actually took a group of kids, second and third graders, who were highly aggressive. Really, kids who kind of got in a lot of fights. And we know that early aggression is really, this early starter model has long-range implications. Kids who are really aggressive early on are more likely to have mental health problems, end up as criminals. So they really wanted to focus on this group of kids. So they randomly assigned them, as we know from good experiments, randomly assigned them to one group got this primetime intervention where it was very intensive. These kids got taken out, their parents were worked with, the people who worked with them were highly, highly trained in working with this really aggressive kids. And then they thought, well, we can't just have this other group of kids, our control group, not get anything, because that just doesn't seem right. So let's see, well, we have a connection. They said, this is in Alabama, we have a connection with the university. Maybe we can have, these undergrads come and have lunch twice a week with this other group of kids. Just twice a week over a semester. Sit in the lunchroom for a half an hour with this child and have lunch with them, this other group. And that was the control group. And I don't know if you're starting to think about what I'm going to say. So here you have this highly intensive, expensive intervention, working with these kids, highly aggressive. And then this group, just the lunch buddies, they were called the lunch buddies, just working with them. Guess what? What did their research findings show at the post-test after they had figured out which kids reduced most in aggression and did better in school? Anybody guessing? Lunch buddies. What was it? It was this small intervention. It was kind of a mistake in some ways, they just didn't have enough control. That something was happening during that lunch buddy program of just this undergraduate coming and sitting at the lunch table with this child, of having and being part. Now, they're trying to think, well, it could be something about it changed the child's reputation by having this adult with them. They were suddenly cool, and, maybe they really, well, think about it, like, oh, you get to have that undergrad, that big adults come and sit with you, who's kind of cool. Was it that, or what could it have been? And they're still trying to unpack that, but there is something about that power of one. Anyways, that's an important study. I'm going to read you now a story, and to leave you with kind of a final message. And it's from the Roots of Empathy, the program that brings an infant into the classroom. And I have to say, this is a program that began in Canada. It's been widespread throughout Canada. It's going, in fact, I was just on the Isle of Man. Does anyone know where Isle of Man is? Oh, good. It's off the coast of England, setting up research there. It's a program that's gone way throughout the world, this idea of an infant being a catalyst for creating a more empathic and caring society. And I'm going to read you a story from the book that's called The Roots of Empathy, written by Mary Gordon, the creator of the program, and get you to think about, I guess, don't judge a book by its cover. Hey, do you know that expression? Don't judge a book by its cover. Okay, you ready to connect? And not play. And be inspired. I know I was. Great. Okay. Darren was the oldest child I ever saw in a Roots of Empathy class. He was in 8th grade, and he had been held back twice. He was 2 years older than everyone else and already starting to grow a beard. I knew his story. His mother had been murdered in front of his eyes when he was 4 years old, and he had lived in a succession of foster homes ever since. Darren looked menacing because he wanted us to know he was tough. His head was shaved except for a ponytail at the top, and he had a tattoo on the back of his head. The instructor of the Roots of Empathy program was explaining to the class about differences in temperament that day. She invited the young mother who was visiting with her class with Evan, her 6-month-old baby, to share her thoughts about her baby's temperament. Joining in the discussion, the mother told the class how Evan liked to face outward when he was in his snuggly. Does everyone know what a snuggly is? You know, like those things you carry the babies in? It's a snuggly, okay? It's a good word for it. So the mom was saying she liked Evan, her 6-month-old, liked to face out and see the world, and didn't want to cuddle into her. She really wanted she talked about how she would have preferred a more cuddly baby. As the class ended, the mother asked if anyone wanted to try on the snuggly, which was green and trimmed with pink brocade. To everyone's surprise, Darren offered to try it. And as the other students scrambled to get ready for lunch, he strapped it on. Then he asked if he could put Evan in it. The mother was a little apprehensive, but she handed him the baby, and he put Evan in facing toward his chest. That wise little baby snuggled right in, and Darren took him into a quiet corner and rocked back and forth with the baby in his arms for several minutes. Finally, he came back to where the mother and the Roots of Empathy instructor were waiting, and he asked, "If nobody has ever loved you, do you still think you could be a good father?" So the story to me from Darren is 2 things. The one is, don't judge a book by its cover. There are going to be some children who you meet who are totally keen, who will love you from the moment you walk in the door, who will say, "Oh, you're great, you're back, you're wonderful," and that's great. It feels so good to be loved like that. But then there's going to be some children who you encounter who will be very apprehensive of you, who might be those kids who say, "This is stupid," or "Why are we doing this?" And kids who look a bit off-put. And they might, we're talking about comfort zone, they might sort of challenge your comfort zone. But it's those children I want to give you the challenge of trying to connect and play and inspire them. Because it's really those types of children that really we need to connect with. Those are the children like Darren who we might initially be off-put by. So I want to end with one of my favorite quotes, and I hope it inspires, because it inspires me every day. The quote is from Margaret Mead, and some of you have probably heard of it many times. "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever have. So go ahead and change the world." Thanks.